Friday, July the 20th, 6 p.m., and it's time for Hip Living. I hope everybody is having a great weekend, getting a great start of this weekend, and the weather's been real nice. It's right in the middle of summer, and we just enjoyed it 70 plus or whatever, 80-something degree weather, but it's all good. And as always, we're always discussing on Hip Living, health-related issues, inspiration, positive people who are making a difference in the community. Today, we're going to definitely focus on a health map. So if you just so happen to be flipping through the channel, or you someone that just wanted to tune into the program, because I did do a live feed on Facebook introducing you to what this subject matter is going to be about today, you already know. But for those of you that are just tuning in, we're going to talk about a very urgent, serious health matter. And this is related to your organs. We're going to focus definitely on one particular organ. But my guest today, he is an advocate, he is an activist. He is going to share his experience of how he has come into being an advocate and an activist, specifically when it comes to chronic kidney disease. We're going to be covering the gamut of a whole lot of things, particularly as it affects the African American community. Definitely going to get into that. So just sit back, and if you want to call into the program because you have some information that you would like to share, because you yourself is someone who has experienced this and experienced some of the things that we're talking about today as regards to organ transplantation, then definitely feel free to call into today's program, ask questions, and share the information, because it's all about empowering people. So let's just get right to the guest today. The guest today is the one and only Mr. Patrick G. And as I said before, he's an advocate, he is an activist, specifically when it comes to chronic kidney disease, but also as it relates to an organization known as UNOS, that is United Network for Organ Sharing. So without further ado, the one and only Mr. Patrick G. Thank you for coming on today's program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good evening to everybody.
Yes, and we've been talking back and forth. And by the way, Patrick G and I go back a little ways. Some of you that probably tune into the program, you see this familiar face. Alumni Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. He's in the house, alumni Thomas Jefferson, all the people that are out there. But let's just get right in, and to lead into, just as before we get into the organization that you're a part in, for the people out in the viewing audience, just share with them your experience, because something happened in 2017.
Yeah, but let me go back some.
Right. Definitely.
April of 2013, I went to my endocrinologist because at the time I was suffering with diabetes. So the endocrinologist is an organ doctor that checks your pancreas, your kidneys, and your liver to make sure that they're functioning well. So basically what I did when I went for that appointment, it was at that time that she told me that my kidneys were functioning at 35%.
Wow.
So that was real hard for me to take, and then she recommended me to go to a nephrologist.
Okay.
So as I was going to the nephrologist, I still had enough kidney function not to start dialysis.
Okay.
So they monitored me each month, and what was going on as my kidneys were declining, I was retaining fluid.
Okay.
So by November the 19th, I walked into my nephrologist's office. I was weighing 380 pounds. I walked in, it was extremely cold outside. All I had on was a white t-shirt, a pair of black sweats, a pair of flip-flops that I had to cut so that my foot could get in them, pair of white socks, and I didn't even have a coat to fit. And my wife was with me, and I couldn't even talk. I'm just sitting there just hyperventilating. Because not only was I retaining fluid, but I was retaining fluid around my lungs and around my heart. And I walked in, and my wife said, "Doc, we need to do this surgery." And he was like, "Fine." And the surgery was for me to go on peritoneal dialysis. And there are different modalities, so I'll explain that.
Okay.
Peritoneal dialysis is when they take and put a catheter, what is called a peritoneal catheter, into your stomach lining,
Okay.
and it goes under your belly. So for 4 years, when I was dialyzing, I would dialyze different than somebody that was doing in-center hemodialysis or even home hemodialysis that had a fistula
Okay.
on their arm. And the
Okay.
fistula is when they take a vein out your leg and they put it in your arm so that they can do your dialysis.
Wow.
Where, yeah, you have 2 needles stuck in, and what it does, the unclean blood goes out, it goes through a machine, it gets re-cleaned and put back into your body.
So real quick, so you said this is 2013 when all this was happening.
Right.
Okay, and so at this point, let's go back over the diagnosis. So let's just get real quick for some of the people out there interviewing on. So what triggered you to go to the hospital real quick? Let's go back to that real quick.
Okay, the reason that my kidneys was declining is that, one, I was diabetic.
You was
I
diabetic.
was an
Okay.
uncontrolled diabetic when I was
Okay.
first initially given this diagnosis. My A1C, which is how they measure your glucose level, was
Okay.
11.7,
Okay, so you had.
and the highest is 12.0.
Okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, I was coming off the meter.
Okay.
The number 2 cause of kidney failure is hypertension.
Okay,
I had an average blood pressure of 210 over 190.
So you got the diabetes,
Right,
you got the hypertension,
exactly.
and you had the weight issue too.
Right, and I was obese.
Obese.
So all of that just caused my kidneys to collapse.
Right. Okay, because I want to get into something real quick because what you just said, and you know, like you said, there were some 3 things that contributed to that.
Right.
But let's just go back again for elementary purposes.
Okay.
Because I think people need to understand the whole purpose of the kidney,
Right.
the basis of that.
Okay. The function of your kidney is to, 1, clean the waste and toxins out of your body.
Okay.
2, it helps to balance your glucose level along with your pancreas.
Okay.
And 3, it pumps good blood to your heart.
Okay.
So all of this works together. So a lot of people put a lot of onus on the heart.
There you
But
go.
if your
Wow.
kidneys aren't working right,
I got you.
then your heart can't work right.
Okay.
So if your kidneys isn't cleaning out the excess calcium and phosphorus,
Okay.
it's all going to deposit in your arteries and cause you to go into cardiac arrest. And a lot of people that are on dialysis right now really suffer from cardiac issues because of that.
Because of that. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so finally, let's speed it up, get right back to what you were saying before. So you're going through all of this. Now, from that point, how do we get to the next step? Because you're talking about the kidney transplantation.
Okay, so I stayed on peritoneal dialysis, which I did at home. And I stayed on dialysis for about 4 years. I got on the kidney transplant list in February 2016, and I actually got my first call for a kidney May the 20th, 2016.
Okay.
My transplant center was at VCU Hume Lee.
Okay.
And when I went down and I got hooked up and everything was placed in the room before surgery, they came in, it was like, well, Mr. G, because the donor's kidneys are small, and it was a deceased donor,
Okay.
I would be getting 2 kidneys to function as 1.
Wow.
So I was like, well, I never heard that. So yeah, yeah, they got me geared up and ready to go. So 5 minutes before I was going to get rolled down to the OR,
Okay.
they came back in. They said, well, Mr. G, we got some bad news. 1 kidney worked and the other one didn't.
Wow.
So there was no need for me to go through that surgery because
Okay.
it was going to fail.
So you had to
Right.
you had to-
So I waited 11 months, and April the 21st, 2017, I received my kidney.
2017. So that was what date was that again? That was May.
April the 21st,
April
2017.
21st. Okay, so that's not that long ago.
No, it's not that long. But the story isn't over because
Okay.
when I got the transplant,
Okay.
it didn't work.
Wow.
I woke up, but the kidney didn't.
Wow.
So I still had to do dialysis,
Wow.
but I had to do a different form.
Okay.
I had to do hemodialysis.
Okay.
But what they did, they put a catheter right in my chest
Okay.
that went straight to my heart.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I had to do dialysis there, and it was very interesting because I would do 24 hours
Okay.
of dialysis at one time, which is unheard of.
That's a long. That's
Right.
A whole lot. That's a whole lot.
Because the average person
Mhm.
that does hemodialysis may do it for between 3 to 5 hours, 3 times a week.
Okay.
I did it for 24 straight for an entire day.
Okay.
So I would do dialysis while I was in the hospital. I would do dialysis on Friday, skip Saturday,
Okay.
do it Sunday, skip
Okay.
Monday. On to that until they felt that I didn't need to do it anymore.
Okay.
Now my kidney didn't wake up until the 47th day.
Wow. Okay, so all this, like you said, all of this is going on, like you said, with your kidneys and everything, and all the dialysis and all of this stuff. So, take us through what are you thinking right now at that time when you're going through this? I mean,
Well,
for the people out there.
To be perfectly transparent, I'm laying in the bed and I am a man of faith,
Right.
and I just knew that God had left me.
Wow. Wow.
Because I'm waking up and I have all these tubes in me,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at my wife and I'm like, well, okay, I got my kidney now, so I'm ready to eat. And she looks at it, she said, baby, the kidney isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't get nobody to explain it so that I could understand.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm just laying there. Then when they tell me I still have to do dialysis, and I'm like, well, you took my catheter out. They said, but we put a chest catheter in. So it's just temporary till your kidney wakes up.
Okay.
And the reason that it didn't wake up is because of my creatinine level.
Okay, so that's explained to people.
Okay,
In a way they can understand that.
There is a terminology, an acronym called GFR. It's your glutathione filtration rate.
Okay.
So if your kidneys GFR is 60 and up, that means that your kidney is working fine. It is filtering out all the toxics and weight. Right. So it can go between 90 to 60.
So yours was pretty much what?
Well, mine was shot because.
Okay, so that right.
Right. So because my kidneys had declined,
Right.
and just to add this, when your kidneys completely shut down,
Mm-hmm.
I did not or was not able to urinate for 2.5 years.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Oh wow. That's like unheard of.
Right. So this is why we really need to take care of our kidneys. So,
So there we go.
I could still use the bathroom. I just could not urinate.
Okay, so now we're there. You got the kidney transplant successful. The next chapter, because it
Right.
led you to where you are right now. You can take us.
Well, five days after the transplant, after the initial transplant,
Right.
I have to have a second surgery because I had a blood clot in my neck
Wow.
from a blood thinner, from heparin.
Okay.
So had to go into another surgery. 3 days after that surgery, I had a third surgery
Oh wow.
because I was nicked doing the surgery, so I was bleeding internally.
So you're taking us through something right now, real
Right.
quick, because a lot of people, unless they've really been through it or you know someone that's been through it, again, this is something that's foreign to them.
Right.
They're on the outside looking in and think, okay, someone has a kidney transplant or a heart transplant or whatever type of transplant.
Right.
And they don't really appreciate or understand, like you said, a lot of the complications that
Right.
come with it. Even if a person gets through it,
Right.
like you said, that's a process. And
Right.
You're taking us like a long process because my mind would be thinking, okay, like you said, you got the kidney and match one failed and you get another one, and it's like, okay, that's it. But as you're pointing out, there's a whole lot more to it than that because there are other issues that could come with it.
Right. And see, I wasn't the norm.
Okay.
You know, because this isn't normal. Because
Right.
a lot of people, when they get a transplant,
Okay.
they start peeing on the table before they even close them up,
Oh.
and that's how you know the kidney's working.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I wasn't the norm
So you got
because I
other
had a lot of other situations going on.
That's
so
it. That's what I was going
yeah.
on.
So I don't
Okay,
want.
so that's the reason why.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to take that as, oh wow, well, I'm not going to donate an organ.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
The reason I like sharing my story is because
Thanks for clearing that up.
I consider myself an overcomer because
Okay.
you know the average person would have thrown in the towel,
I got
but
you.
no,
I got
you know
you.
it's just each person's
It's
individual
different.
journey.
It's different. Thanks,
Exactly.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yes.
Okay.
So after the third surgery, after they did that, I had to wait 17 days
Okay. Okay.
to have a fourth surgery because I had what is known as a J tube hooked up to my side, and it looks like a little hand grenade. They had to remove that and create what was known as a peritoneal window so I could drain on the inside.
Okay.
So after that, and I started urinating a little bit, but because my creatinine level was at an 8.9, in order for my kidney to function normally,
Right.
it has to be between 0.6 and 1.2. So I still had a long way to go. So, and because the creatinine is all the built up waste that my kidneys nor dialysis could pull out.
Okay.
So because I had so much in it, it was at a high level. So I had to eventually wait for it to kind of wean out. And the only way that it could wean out is for the kidney to slowly start functioning through dialysis, which would allow me to be able to urinate it out.
Oh, okay.
So the more I began to urinate,
Mm-hmm.
the more my creatinine level came down to
Okay.
is at its normal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at its normal level right now.
So,
So
like you said, you had a long journey.
Right.
And I'm glad you pointed it out. Like you said, it's like you are a rare case, like you said.
right, exactly.
But for a lot of people, when they do get the kidney
Yeah,
transplant,
it normally kicks right in.
it kicks right in, and so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to hear. And like you just said, you know, for some people out there, and we're going to definitely get deep into it as far as the African American community, because I was reading something. I was make sure I did research before we did this program, and it was amazing some of the stats that I came up with, particularly when it comes to the African American community, when it comes to organ transplantation. Period. In the
Right.
waiting list, it's estimated around 30 or over 30,000 people. I don't know what year that was. They were saying.
You talking about that's on the wait list?
Yeah, on the wait list.
Oh,
I
it's
think
more
that's
than
what-
that.
It's more than that. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. And I
yeah.
was like, what? I'm like, but that's still a lot of people because I'm saying that's like if you look at the Coliseum holds 11,000.
Exactly.
Right. So that's 3 times that.
Exactly.
That's a whole lot of people. There's got to be more than that, like you just said.
Yeah, UNOS puts out weekly updated statistics.
I got you. Okay.
Because they are like the leading organ procurement organization. So most of your heart, kidney, pancreas, liver come through UNOS.
Right. Right.
And they keep all the national
I got you.
stats.
Okay.
So right now there is probably
It's 100.
130,000 plus people
Wow.
that's on the transplant list. Out of that 130 plus thousand, 100,000 or maybe 110,000
Okay.
are waiting on just a kidney.
Wow.
Yes.
That's just one. Wow.
Exactly.
Man, that's something.
Yeah. So the kidney is like the biggest organ need
Because I
right
want to
now.
go somewhere with that because, like you said, even before we even get to the kidney transplant, there's a lot of people right now, because this gets into some detailed stuff that people got to really listen to when you talk about your kidneys.
Right.
And really don't play this down because, and we're going to, this bringing me into some other stuff I'm going to discuss a little bit down the road, but like you said, the kidney being so common of a transplant. So it's telling you something that's going on.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of factors, and we want to go ahead and get into it right now. Like in your case, like you said, they're individual cases. Not everybody's the same.
Right.
You had a combination of stuff going on with you. But you don't even have to be in that category. You can be just
Exactly.
someone, and I know some people in my family, starts off with the kidney stones.
Exactly.
You know, it starts off with some other stuff. You're talking about a chronic situation, but the bottom line is that's a telltale. Even before we get to the transplant, we really need to be paying attention to our kidneys.
Well, and not only that, you can have ailments with your heart that will cause your kidney to fail. So if you don't take care of one organ, it could damage your other organ. You know, because my diabetes was hurting my pancreas also.
Right.
But it's just that I got my transplant in enough time that I didn't have to have a kidney transplant. I mean, a kidney pancreas transplant. And they do those too, where your glucose level is really out of whack, and normally happens in people that are type 1 diabetics.
Right.
So so I was lucky that I just needed just one organ. Yeah, and it was just one kidney.
Okay, yeah, that's something. That's something like you said. And, we're going to be definitely getting, like I said, continue to talk about that. We talk about your kidneys and everything, because like you said, you know, you have in your situation, for example, like you said, there were a combination of things that was going on, and I mentioned something about the kidney stones. That seems to be very, very common, and it's definitely related to the diet. Again, and the other thing too, and I think about this too. One thing I notice about chronic disease, we know, for example, when we talk about people, this is going on and that is going on. But even somebody who is so-called health conscious.
Right.
You follow me?
Yeah, right.
That's the funny thing when we talk about chronic disease. Why we got to really pay attention to what's going on with our bodies. Even someone that's so-called healthy, like in my case, I'm going to bring myself up real quick. I had an issue with Meniere's ringing in the ear. Okay, and I'm like, what in the world's going on with that?
Yeah.
You follow me?
Right.
And so it's something that we really can't write off when you talk about what you're mentioning right now, your organs and one thing leading to another. If you have high blood pressure, if you have high cholesterol, or if you just one of them people that feel like, you know, ain't nothing going on with me, but the thing about it, when it happens, it happens.
Exactly.
Which brings me to my point when you were saying, and we were talking about this before we went on the air, about people being reactionary.
Right.
Let's just get right at it, you as an advocate. I want to get into that because I want to get into the type of conversations that you have with people in the room. In particular, we talk about the black community. Take us there, whether it's the church, the ministry, the community center. What are you telling people as an advocate? How do you have a conversation with them? Because the people I'm interviewing on this, you really need to get this.
When I talk to people out in the community, I share my story, and I share all the gore of it. And it's not to scare anybody, but it's to show that it's to show that how a person can overcome certain things and not be you know, not be defined by what you are dealing with, but how you can overcome it. A lot of folks kind of shut it down. You know, they don't want to know anything about it until it happens. I'll never forget one time I was with the National Kidney Foundation at the Southern Women's Expo this past March. And there was a young lady that came to the table that wanted to bring her mother over because her mother was out of control diabetic. So when I asked her mother, I told her I was a kidney transplant recipient, and you know my diabetics was out of whack, but I changed my diet, changed my lifestyle, and got everything under control. And she told me flat out, she said, "Well, that's good for you, but when it hit me, it'll hit me." I said, "Ma'am, I'm not trying to scare you, but you do know that can lead to kidney disease and cardiac disease and stuff like that." Yeah, like I said, when it hit me, I deal with it then. And this is kind of like the norm.
Did you run into?
Yeah, I mean, nobody really wants to think about it because of everything else that's going on out here.
Well, yeah, I thought about that too. I was thinking about that because it's got to be something like you said. Usually, if somebody reacts like that when it comes to their health, there's something else going on.
Right.
If you don't really feel good about your health or whatever, like you said, in that particular individual, that particular segment of our community, like you said, it's got to be something else going on. Like if they say if it hit, it happens, then that means there's something else going on.
Yeah, and then when you talk diet, people get defensive.
Yeah.
Like, well, no, And this is even in the dialysis community, in the kidney community. No, I'm gonna eat what I want to eat. Okay, well that's fine, but know that you can either change how you're eating that particular thing to eat it more healthier,
Right.
or you're going to deal with the consequence. Well, I'm gonna deal with it. I grew up on this type of food. It didn't kill my mom before them, and I'm like, you right, but it wasn't like that.
Well,
Now, because with all the process and all the chemicals,
that's
so
just like one of them old time conversations.
So I just leave it alone,
Yeah. Like you said, when people go there, regardless of whether it's black people, whoever, like I tell them, I say, that's an old tiresome conversation, because the reality right now is, and we're going to get into that probably in the second half. Healthcare is big now.
Yeah,
it's no joke, and the same person that says that. And if almost like you just wish you could follow that person. And some of them might not have families. It's like you wish you could follow that person. And it's nothing like being in a chronic situation, which But you have some people who say what you just said, they think like that, and they shaking their head and saying, you know what, I wish I woulda, coulda, woulda.
but you know what? So I was that person.
Yeah, I thought I would bring that up.
I was that person, and I said the same thing. And then when it hit, you want to go back and kick yourself in the butt. Like I should have listened.
Right.
So yeah,
and that's the point. You don't ever want to be in that predicament, like you said, the grace of God.
Exactly.
But even when we said the grace of God, and I tell a lot of people that's true, but God can only do but so much too.
And you got to do the rest.
You got to take the initiative. It's okay to pray. I believe in the power of prayer too, but let's be real. You got, like you said, this temple, and
exactly.
You got an obligation to be a steward of that temple. And it's not about bashing anybody upside the head, asking anybody to be perfect or anything like that, because we all have to grapple and face our health challenges. But be smart. There's really no excuse nowadays. And even when people talk like that and say that, I say, wait a minute, listen. There's information out there.
Yeah.
There are ways that you can prepare your food. There are things you can do when it comes to exercise. There's so many things, like I said. So when people go there, like you just said, it's got to be something else going on. But tune in. Right now, we're at Hip Living, and we're talking about organ transplantation. And if you would like to call into the program real quick before we go on break, I have my special guest today. He is an advocate, particularly for chronic kidney disease. We're really talking about chronic kidney disease right now and his experience, and he's sharing his testimony. If you're someone who wants to get some information about this, you want to share it, please feel free to call into the program. We got a few minutes before we go into break. Just like I was saying, we're going to get into some the second half, because I really want to talk about healthcare and social economics and how they relate. So we're going to get into that on the break. This is Hip Living. We'll be right back in a few minutes. Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video of the Boomer Fit channel. Now, the thing that inspired me to do this channel was the fact that, you know what, I'm a part of the Boomer generation. I am a fitness instructor, but what I've come to realize that even as a fitness instructor and someone that likes to work out in the gym, there's not a whole lot of information and a lot of sources out there where there are exercise programs designed for people with me in mind, and of course for you in mind. If you are part of the Boomer generation, that means you're probably somewhere around the age of 40, 50 plus age range. You probably know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of programs out there. There are a lot of fitness instructions out there. There are a lot of YouTube instructional videos, and there are a few, and they are growing, and I want to be a part of that, which are specifically designed for us. So the whole point of the Boomer Fit group is basically a community of us, of the Boomer generation. Now, we got a whole lot to be proud of, because you know what? We are, in fact, the largest growing among demographic age groups when it comes to joining health clubs
and fitness centers. Now, some of that may have to do with our upbringing, because we came up in the 1960s, 1950s, 1970s. You know, we were part of recreation parks. We had a whole lot of stuff going on. We were very active. You know, mama and daddy had to call us in the house. Well, that time has passed. It's a different generation right now. But I want to get back to the boomer generation about us. And for us right now, getting back to my point, we've gotten back into exercise and we want to get back into exercising, but as I pointed out, there's not a whole lot of information out there for us. So the whole creation of the Boomer Fit group is to have a place where we can share information. I'm going to be giving you some instructional videos and some simple exercises you can do. I have this thing what I call do what's in front of you. It's all about doing what you can do while you have the time to do it, because I know a lot of you boomers out there, you're working, you got your business, you got your family, you got a whole lot of things going on, and you don't have a whole lot of time. But the bottom line, it's good to stay active and good to stay fit and to keep yourself healthy, and that's what Boomer Fit is all about. And again, this is your community, it's our community, and I like to thank you, and I look forward to you supporting Boomer Fit. Like this channel. If you want to share some stuff on Boomer Fit, or some comments or some suggestions on some things that you would like to see on the Boomer Fit group channel, then please feel free to leave some comments if you got any questions of what this is all about. Or you can also Facebook me. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm gonna very soon, in the very near future, gonna have a website up, the Boomer Fit group website. So there's a whole lot of great things that are gonna be going on the Boomer Fit YouTube channel. So stay tuned. I'm out of here, and thank you.
Okay, we're back, and something that you just saw. Yeah, that was a whole picture from Thomas Jefferson back in the day. JHW track team, my man Patrick G. I hope some of y'all are tuning in if you're from JHW or TJ. I'm from the Richmond area.
Don't laugh too hard.
Yeah, definitely. But in case you're just tuning in, or maybe you're tuning back in, my man and I were talking about this most urgent health issue right now. We're talking about organ transplantation. During the first half of the segment of Hip Living, we specifically talk about kidney transplantation and his experience and his journey and what he went through, and how imperative it is and how important it is, particularly when it comes to that organ, or when it comes to anything that's going on with our bodies. I think we got a call. Which one? Speaker. I'm sorry, I apologize. Caller?
Yes, how you doing?
Doing awesome, doing great. How you doing?
First time listener, man. I enjoy your show, man.
Appreciate it.
This is Jerome calling in, Jerome Gray.
Okay, how you doing, Jerome?
I'm doing blessed, man. Good to see y'all, man, and our brother. Yes, sir, I'm doing wonderful. Good to see y'all, man. I enjoy y'all show. First time listener. And I really want to touch on one basis about my brother. He was saying about his kidneys.
Okay.
I want to know what the most important thing for your kidneys is. It water? I heard people say water. I heard people say beer. I heard certain things that flush your kidneys. But I want to hear from you, from a man that's been through this. And if you could let me and my wife hear you, let her know that water is very good for your kidneys. Will you just explain that? I'm going to shut up for a minute.
Thank you for bringing that
Certainly.
up.
Water.
That's a good point.
Period. Water is the best hydrant that your kidney can have. I know people talk about cranberry juice as far as helping your urinary tract. I will leave that to a physician. Okay. But if you drink plenty of water, you stay hydrated, that is the best drink. Now, carbonated sodas, whether it's diet, or regular sodas will dehydrate you. If you drink too much coffee, it will dehydrate your kidney.
Wow.
If you drink too much homebrewed tea, you could develop kidney stones over a long period of time because the all of the tea leaves,
Right.
those particles will form a stone, and that's exactly, it's like crystallized salt
Wow, great.
that will get into your urinary tract, and that's where you would feel all that pain. So the best drink for your kidneys, water.
Definitely water.
Keep drinking water. If you can drink over 64 ounces a day,
Okay.
more is better.
Because really, like you just said, and caller, thanks for
Yes.
calling in. That's a great question. Because I'm one of those people. I'm always advocating water, so I'm really glad that you called in and raised that question about water. Because as he pointed out, both of us are strong advocates
Yeah.
for water because much of your body is made up of water.
Exactly.
But then when you get into, like you said, and caller, thanks for raising that question about the kidneys. It becomes even more imperative
Right.
that you definitely drink water and carbonated drinks and all of that stuff that we really shouldn't be drinking regardless. As you pointed out, you want to steer away from that.
Right, because one of the things that we didn't talk about, but I share now,
Okay.
when you get a new organ, you can't go back to the old ways. So there are certain foods that I have to watch out for. Like I can't even drink green tea
Wow.
because I can't take any herbal supplements because they will affect the medications that I'm on
Well, yeah, I've heard
and
that.
hurt the kidney. Right.
I've heard a lot of that. And even
Right.
regardless of, like you said, whether it's kidneys or some other things, when it comes to herbal stuff,
Right.
even though some people are proponents of it, you got to be very, very careful when it comes to that.
Exactly.
And if you're on medication, you definitely want to consult with your doctor.
But it's not, and just to add to that, a lot of people will go back to their old lifestyle, and you can't do that with a new organ. They may go back to smoking. Smoking will hurt it,
Wow.
hurt your kidney,
Wow.
because you got to understand there's, you're going to inhale some of that smoke into your lungs,
Okay.
and that's going to mess with your heart, which in the particles is going to mess with that one kidney
Wow.
that you have, because when God created us, He gave us two kidneys, but we only need one to live with. And what happens? The kidney is the size of your fist,
Okay.
but when you get it transplanted, it expands
Oh, okay.
so that you're able to live with that one kidney.
Oh,
And one of the things that we need to
I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, to understand is that one kidney you have to treat like gold, like it's priceless, because it is.
And that makes sense in a way when you say you can live with one kidney, because sometimes people that are living will donate their kidney.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That makes sense, what you just said. Okay, well, and like I said, thanks. If you want to call into the program, if you got any questions or comments, something you want to share, please feel free to call in. We're here to empower you, to give you some very pertinent and relevant information about organ transplantation. We were talking about the kidneys. But let's get into something because, again, you are an advocate. You're basically, I can say you're also a lobbyist. You're a
Yeah.
spokesperson in many ways. And this brings us into something else because so much, and we're talking about going to the hospital, going to the doctor. But the thing about it, unless someone is like Medicaid, Medicare, and then that's another issue too. You got people that are in the verge or in the margins, working class, poor, but even people who quote unquote middle class, one paycheck away from being laid off.
Exactly.
We're getting into something deep now, something
Yes.
very, very serious. Because we're talking about something, what I want to get into, public policy and how that ties into this issue when you talk about organ transplantation. Because again, Patrick lobbies in Washington, D.C. He meets Congress people and representatives. He is someone who really understands a whole lot as it relates to public policy, which is a segue of why we need to vote, why we need to participate, and why we really need to be on top of these issues. Now, you take the floor on that.
I have a motto that I carry with me everywhere I go, especially when I go on Capitol Hill. I am the voice of the voiceless and the face of the faceless in this fight with kidney disease. So that means that when I know that I'm going on Capitol Hill, I will go to various dialysis centers. I will go and meet with various dialysis patients to find out what their needs are.
Okay.
So irregardless of what policy we're going up there to lobby for,
Okay.
if that policy
Okay.
isn't going to bring change
Okay.
to the people that I've talked to,
Okay.
then I'm going to invoke their feelings in there. So when I go up there, I don't just share my story. I share the story of the community.
Okay.
I share why it's important that patients, not only dialysis patients, but cancer patients,
Right.
people suffering from sickle cell anemia, lupus, because all of these tie into it because people that are on dialysis have multiple issues.
Okay.
So it's not just dialysis or somebody with kidney disease. You could be a person with kidney disease that's having heart failure, or somebody, kidney disease is attributed to sickle cell anemia and lupus. So you're talking about one or more different chronic illnesses. And what people want is a better quality of life. People want better health care. People want affordable health care. And patients want to be engaged because a patient doesn't want to go to the doctor to get judged on the illness that they're dealing with. They know they have this illness. They want compassion. They want somebody to sympathize with them while they're going through this.
So what is one of the challenges, most common challenges that you're finding as you go to Washington, D.C., that you try to share with the legislators, that the people are telling you, and you mentioned the passion part.
Right.
But I'm gonna go somewhere with this, for example, the Affordable Care Act. Because one of the sticky points about the Affordable Care Act, which the upside of it for a lot of people was this pre-existing conditions. You follow me?
Right.
Which was one of the barriers for people before the Affordable Care Act, and ironically, there's a threat right now.
Right.
That's one of those things that was short-lived. Kind of take us to that right now.
Okay. We're still waiting for the GOP to come in with a replacement for the Affordable Care Act. And I will say that the American Kidney Fund, which is an organization, if there's anybody in the audience that is currently on dialysis, and you are having challenges in paying your medical bill, the American Kidney Fund is the only kidney organization that will assist in that, which means that one of the challenges that they're facing is insurance companies refusing to accept money from third parties or from charitable organizations. So the American Kidney Fund will give an individual up to $20,000 annually to pay their medical bills.
Wow.
If they don't have a secondary insurance, because as is required, dialysis patients are required to have Medicare in order to get a transplant.
Oh, okay.
Because if I would have had a living donor, the Medicare would have paid for their medical expenses. Okay. Luckily for me, I have Medicare and private insurance. So for the people that don't have private insurance, Medicare only pays 80%. So you got that 20% left over.
Wow.
The American Kidney Fund will help them to pay that 20% up to $20,000. Now you get that money, you can't go out party and all this other stuff. It has to go, which means that they will have to send their bills, forward their medical bills to the American Kidney Fund, and they will pay it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure. Okay, so let's say a person has private insurance.
Right.
Okay, but what I'm getting is sometimes private insurance is really not even enough.
Well, if you have private insurance, it won't put you in that category.
It won't. Okay.
Right. So.
I got you. Okay.
Right. So this has to be an individual with just Medicare or no insurance at all.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I got you. Because, like you said, we be amazed and surprised at the number of people out there, like you said, that fall into that category with no insurance at all, and people just
Exactly.
assume. But you know, with the cost of living increase going up, wages are going down dramatically. There are jobs out there, even if they have insurance, it's not the best insurance
Right.
in the world. And like you said, there are people just that don't really have insurance at all. But we, you know, which brings me back to my point, like you just said, when you're in Washington, D.C., and places like that, whatever people's side is on the debate about what the government should or shouldn't do, the bottom line is when it comes to our health, you know, that really, you know, in my opinion, I'm getting political here, but to be honest with you, it's like a right.
Exactly. And, you know, with the current climate up in Washington, it never fails that every time we go up there, there is something going on that kind of distracts
We get distracted
from
That's
this.
what you're saying.
And, you know, a lot of the politicians will be like, well, yeah, we're going to look at this and we'll get back with you. But if you don't stay on them,
And yeah, you have to you really do.
because I will give you a prime example. I had a congressman
Okay.
when I was going up there to talk about the Living Donor Protection Act, which is a bill to protect any individual that wants to donate an organ
Okay.
to another person
Wow, okay.
without being discriminated against by their insurance companies or being discriminated against by their jobs.
Wow.
So in other words, you have people out here that want to donate
Okay.
to family members, friends, or just donate to help somebody
Right.
to save their life.
Right.
But they're afraid that one, the job won't give them the 6 weeks,
Right.
6-week leave.
Right.
And then the
right.
insurance company will say, well, who told you to do that? No, we're not going to cover you no more. And they'll kick you off.
They
So,
all about the money.
right. So that
Okay,
prevents
I got
people
you.
from
I got you.
donating. So
Wow.
when I talked to this particular congressman, he told me, well, organ donation is a choice. So why would I support that bill?
Wow. And like you said, you know, it's kind of sad what you just said a second ago, because if that particular congressperson is in that predicament,
Right.
it's a different story. Because we hear sometimes these stories about this particular congressman got sick or this person had a heart transplant, whatever. Well, they got the best insurance that our tax dollars can pay for. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know, that you sharing that's something, you know, that you have people that actually think that way.
Yeah.
And we could spend a whole lot
Yeah.
of time.
But on the good side of
Okay.
this, the American Association of Kidney Patients, which is the largest kidney patient-driven organization in the country,
Okay.
had a meeting with Secretary Azar
Okay, that's good.
toward the end of May, and his father was on dialysis and
Okay.
had a transplant, and he understood it. So he
Right.
he acknowledged the need in this. So that was good. That was good for kidney patients and even those suffering with other chronic illnesses. But they did approve a measure known as Kidney X, which is bringing innovative technologies in. And right now you have technologies talking about a implantable artificial kidney that's probably like maybe this big, where you won't need medication
Oh, okay.
to do this. And there was another thing talking about a wearable dialysis machine where a
Oh,
person
that's
can go
good.
out and
Okay.
about.
So the
Yeah.
technology
So
is there.
right. So this is opening up a new door for kidney research
Okay.
because you know we've been doing dialysis has been out over 50 years and there really hasn't been any changes.
Oh, I got you.
You know, so this is good.
Long overdue right now.
Right.
Some advancement.
So there is some hope down
There's
the
some
road.
hope down
Yeah.
the road. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That is awesome. So yeah, that's definitely awesome what you just said. That there's a lot of advancement, and like you said, it's so imperative. Like I said, for people to stay on top of this. And I'm glad to see that you're doing what you're doing, being
Thank
an
you.
advocate. And you'd be amazed at, you know, the people that are out there standing up and fighting the fight. I'm thinking about somebody else real quick. You remember Lawrence Cooper, right?
Yeah.
Now, I had no idea that his mother, sickle cell anemia,
Oh, yeah.
that she was an advocate for that.
Yeah.
And I did not know that. I had her on the show. That's why I
Oh,
brought her
okay.
up. She was on the show, and I was interviewing her. And I'm thinking about this because this is Richmond, Virginia. Now, you're doing something right now as an advocate in Washington, D.C., and that's awesome, man, because like you said, people don't appreciate your advocacy and the people out there that have the voices, and what you have demonstrated is just how important it is to really be persistent. You know, this is part of what the political process is you stay engaged. Voting is very important. That's
Yeah.
the first step. We do need to go to the polls and vote. But when people say things like, my vote don't matter, understand, look, when you're in a situation, when you're in a crisis, when you don't have nowhere else to turn, and you need some help, you need some assistance. I mean, all this talk about not depending on the government, that's a bunch of nonsense. Believe me, there are a lot of people that are getting government money, wealthy people, whoever. I don't want to get into that. But the reality is, we live in a country, we live in a nation where there is resources. And the bottom line is when it comes to health, there's no excuse for people not having access. At the end of the day, it's all about having access. And believe me, the medical community, these insurance companies are going to get theirs. Obviously, it's more about greed. And we really got to get past that greed.
Well,
And
and it's
go ahead,
also
real quick.
about the new millennials. See, the reason when you brought up pre-existing conditions,
Right.
see, it's better
Mhm.
for the insurance company to kick people off
Oh, yeah.
with pre-existing
Right.
conditions and then bringing the new millennials
I got
that
you.
are healthier.
I got you. Yeah.
So that they can get all the money and won't
I
have
got
to
you
pay
saying
anything
right,
out.
Right. That's
You
what
know,
you're saying, right. That's
So
bad.
that's why there's this constant battle. But to get back to the advocacy, me, you, everybody, if you look at biblical principles, you go to Proverbs 31 verses 8 and 9, where it alludes to, we need to be the voice in not passing judgment, but the voice for the oppressed.
Okay.
So we need to be, before we can advocate for anybody else, we need to be our own advocate, because I can't fight your fight.
I got, okay.
Only you can tell your story. And that's why this platform is much needed, because it gives us the opportunity
Right.
to be able to do that. So I applaud anybody that's standing up and going and doing, the things that they're doing. But the best advocate is you.
I got you.
Because when these people hear your voice,
I got you.
then that means that they need to move.
And so what you're saying, we all are advocates.
We all are advocates,
all
yeah.
advocates is good, and that's why I tell people to call into the program.
Yeah.
Like I say, we all have a story to tell. Like you said, we all have a testimony. Well, and particularly, like I say, I'm passionate about the health and the wellness, and I encourage people to be engaged and be involved. Like I said, if you don't have your health, what do you have? Definitely welcome, and glad to have you on today's program, and glad that you took the time out of what I can imagine your busy schedule,
Oh, man, but I
doing
thank
the
you,
work
man.
that you're doing right now, and hopefully we'll be doing something in the very near future. We talked about
Oh,
that
yeah.
before we came on the air. And thank you for those of you that have tuned in, and thanks for the caller that called in with that question. Keep tuning in, and as always, stay healthy, stay well. This is Hip Living, and I'm gonna close real quick with this. Been on the air for about maybe 3 or 4 years right now with Hip Living. And the one thing that I'm very strong, very adamant about is I say healthy, inspiring, positive living. That's a philosophy that I try to live by. That's a philosophy that many of the people that are my guests try to live by. And it's all about living in your purpose, living in your greatness. And as he said before, we all have a testimony, we all have a story. Never underestimate your ability to be an advocate, to make a difference in your community. It does not matter your socioeconomic level. It does not matter what you've been through in life. You are not your problem or your crisis or whatever. What you have been through, the fact that you wake up every day, that you're breathing, believe me, that you have something to contribute, to make a difference, and to be that what I call healthy, inspiring, positive person, positive living. So with that being said, I hope everyone have a blessed, great, and awesome weekend. Tune in next week for another episode of Hip Living. And my guests are Patrick Thank you for coming on today's program.
Thank you for having me, man. I really
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right.
That boogie down, down on home.